everybody. It's another episode of My Whole Shonen. Oh, okay, all right, guys. Serious note, though. So welcome to the show, the podcast. My name is Victor, and here joining me today we have
Master Jedi
and Mitchell,
and we even have
Jan. And my ears hurt from those introduction.
Okay.
From that introduction.
Yeah, so CJ's not with us today, but it's okay. But we're going to do a very chill episode today, and we're going to talk about the interesting meta shift of Commander. You know, from 2011 to now. Oh, we might have to break it up to two parts, but either way. So, from your guys' experience, like, when did you guys play Commander? Like, what year was it?
Oh, I started out in 2011, and
you did?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually really funny because it's like we both started at the same time. Well, it's like it was right when I met Jedi, and Jedi was like, "You guys are playing Magic," and I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Why don't you play Yu-Gi-Oh?" I'm like, "Because Yu-Gi-Oh's expensive, and you know, can Yu-Gi-Oh have multiplayer fun?"
$80 soul and warnings.
Oh my god!
Exactly. So pretty much like, yeah, we definitely did play back in 2011, but it was very small though. It was super duper niche. Not many people played Commander, and I think it was due to the fact that like the supply for the Commander precons at the time were super small.
But then again, the demand was really low.
It was, yeah, it really was. It was more of a super niche thing, and so I don't know. I think it's kind of funny because how like looking back now, it's like, oh my goodness, Commander has grown so much. They actually have an influence on the market price, guys. Do you find that ridiculous, right? It's like this casual card is now like $10 because of Commander.
Oh, Ristic Studies used to be like $5 from what I remember.
Ristic Studies used to be $1.
Was it the dollar? Oh my gosh.
That's why I have so many back then. I was like, oh, this card is so good. I'm going to buy a lot of these.
Oh yeah, Aura Shards used to be 50 cents too.
Yeah, Aura Shards is another one that's like...
You're making me feel bad, guys.
all right. So Mitchell, when did you start Commander?
Well, 2 years later, 2013, but I still didn't invest in any of the older cards.
But that's not too bad though, to be honest, because like lately they've been putting a lot more better, I guess, like EDH staples lately. So it's not too bad. Although there are some ones that I do agree, like Ristic Studies and Cyclonic Wrath, definitely need to be reprinted.
But I always would have wanted to have bought like the dual lands like at like $20.
See,
That's like in hindsight, me too. Is like I wish I had not spent money. Well, to be honest, it's like during high school I bought like standard stuff, so I was playing like, you know, it was like during Zendikar Alara block and everything, and if I had known like I can pick up the original Alpha Beta duels for like, you know, $20, I was like, I probably would have.
I wouldn't have played Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, I know, right? Screw Yu-Gi-Oh, guys. This is why you don't play Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, Yublios or whatever Rudy calls it.
Those were also the days where I was complaining their lands were $20 and now they're like $50, $90.
Oh, the fetch lands? Yes, the fetch lands.
Oh, fetch lands are ridiculous though.
Yeah,
like
so
$100 Scalding Tarns.
Oh yeah, I'm sitting on my foil one. I'm gonna.
Oh, fancy you.
Everyone's gonna yell at me in the comments, be like, "Oh, Victor's a hoarder." I'm like, "Hey, I actually pulled and got very lucky." Okay, and it's like, I'm just trying to wait and see and cash out on it really high. But regardless, it was back to the topic, guys. Is that so for Commander? The meta game was very different back in the day. Believe it or not, it was super slow. What I like to call it as BattleCruiser magic, and you guys can definitely agree with that because it was literally a series of land go, the occasional Signet, the occasional Rampant Growth or Kodama's Reach,
And even the occasional Soul Ring.
Yeah, occasional Soul Ring, and then like maybe the occasional like Explosive Vegetation, and then you just wait to play your big fatties, and then you try to like smash face or do some sort of ridiculous combo that requires like 20 mana.
Oh,
So
Commander was very kaiju style back then. Who had the biggest Godzilla on the board?
it was literally a measure of like you know, are we gonna bleep this out? I was gonna be like, you know, big D energy, you know.
Oh my goodness.
It really is, because it's like, you know, it's like, oh, let me play this Avenger of Zendikar, and like, you know, and then all of a sudden play Explosive Vegetation, chain it up with like a bunch of other landfall stuff, you know. And you know, Crater of Behemoth, like, you know, it was so cheap back then because it was considered a Commander junk card.
Oh yeah, it was a $2 card.
Yeah.
when it first came out, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone was all about Grizzlebrand for Grizzlebrand combos and stuff like that. But then, like, Creative with Behemoth was like a $2 card, and look at where it is now. It's like $30.
$40.
Is it 40 now?
It went up to 40.
It went up to 40. Yeah.
Ooh, ooh.
As a person who watch over MTG stocks.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, so like the metagame has shifted a lot. Where like the Commander community has a crazy driving force when it comes to prices now, and it's like kind of crazy. It's awesome, but it's also kind of sad because it's really hard to make a good deck that's like $50 now. Like you still can get away with it.
I mean,
but then,
Commander's Quarters makes the effort to do something like that.
Exactly, which is why check them out. Shout out to Commander's Quarters, Mitch. You're awesome.
Not me.
No, a different kind of Mitch. But okay. But regardless, though, so back to what we were saying. Back in the 2011 precons, it was actually pretty cool because we never had pre-constructed decks for a huge format like this. And the cool thing was that each deck actually included signets, soul rings, use typical ramp-based cards in their colors, and on top of that, like awesome new commanders, as well as cards that were first designed for Commander, like Collective Voyage. Like it was the what's that one mechanic you guys recall? It was like Join Forces. Is that what it does?
Join Forces, yeah.
Yeah. So like they first introduced like mechanics like those, and people thought they were really weird, and they thought they were actually really cool. And so this is where it kind of sprung in. Like Commander can be like can have his own mainstay in terms of Magic formats.
A lot of the commanders for this particular format, when they were printed in 2011, they were actually like pretty notable even to today. Like we got those Kalias, right?
Yeah. Kalia. I remember Kalia being like the big boogeyman, and I thought it was really funny because it's like, if only CJ was here, he'd be talking about his Kalia deck, and it's like his first love. Like when he saw her, he was like, "Oh yeah."
And Kali is the bane of my existence.
But yeah, so like the Commander design was actually really cool. However, though, if you look back on the way the decks were built, they were kind of a hodgepodge of just a bunch of good cards. 1/3 of the deck will be played for like one Commander strategy. For example, like Gave, it's like you had a bunch of +1/+1 counters, right? But then you also had another was for Reanimator with like Teneb, and then or Carador even because Carador came in that deck.
Oh yeah.
And then another one was like for tokens, and like tokens synergize with Gave, so it was kind of weird because it was kind of all over the place.
The power level was kind of high, you'd have to admit, though.
For the first time it came out, it was pretty good from the get go from the box, but that's because of the
value,
play style,
and also it's just value.
Which was what the first few years of Commander was.
Yeah. But then if you move
all
on,
about the value.
If you move on though, like 2012 we took a break, and 2013 came out the Shards of Alara Commanders, and this is where you saw it way more relevant, where like especially the Rune deck, part of it was like weird tappy untap stuff with Derevi, and then you also had Rune Flickering, and you also had like Band Control would steal your stuff with Rubinia.
So Derevi untaps Rune to then flicker something. Would it be flicker? Would you flicker Derevi to like?
I don't know. And then like when Derevi enters the battlefield, you untap something else. I don't know.
And then Aura Shards trigger.
Sadly, Aura Shards is not reprinted in that deck. I wish it was. But that's what I'm saying though, is that like the decks constructed back then was like a hodgepodge of cards. They're all over the place, and the meta has like slowly shifted though, because when you get onto the next year, 2014 with the monocolor ones.
Well, with 2013, I felt like it was still kind of like in the middle because you had commanders like Traxamundar. And, and Traxamundar was extremely, like, casual. I felt like. I don't know. He's 7 mana, and he was basically a beat stack.
Yeah, it's still a casual format. And then, like, the funny thing was that I was, like, in that deck, though, it's like, you had Traxamundar where it's all about, like, zombies and sacrifice stuff.
And
but then you had Nekusar where it's all about drawing and dealing damage. And then you also had Jaleva. And Jaleva's like, I steal cards off the top of my opponent's library and, like, cast them. And it's like, how do those three relate? They don't. And so like the decks like that were designed back then were just like more or less just a bunch of awesome cards, and you can kind of take them to through 3 different paths.
They felt more like melting pot Commander products.
It really was.
Yeah.
And then that's where I think like Wizards of the Coast tried to like make try their best to make the next couple products in the next coming years more focused. And so with the next one being monocolors, like how hard can it be to mess up monocolors, right? It's like monocolors, like come on guys. And so you had like red artifacts, white equipment, green like elf stompies,
And Freyali is in there.
and then black was low key. I felt like it was kind of like mono black good stuff.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. And then what's the last color missing? Blue. Blue was really interesting because it was blue stompy. Because it was like, because you used the fairy to untap all your mana rocks to ramp out giant krakens and beaters.
Oh,
It was really weird. It was the weirdest take on blue. Because like a lot of people say blue would be the most broken deck, and blue would be. But then they took a very interesting approach to blue. And utilizing Teferi's because this Teferi is known to be the CEDH Teferi,
Yeah, Temporal Archmage.
Temporal Archmage, and but in this case when he first came out, he was actually used to just untap a bunch of mana rocks and fill a bunch of mana and cast these giant sea monsters, and I thought that was actually kind of cool and very innovative.
He wasn't really much of the competitive kind of, like he wasn't as. I mean, I guess he was an enabler, but he wasn't really considered like the premier 2014.
Was competitive EDH like a thing back
No,
then?
like the biggest thing that we had closest to back then was like dual commander or French commander, which was 1v1, and your life total was 30, and they had like their own separate ban list, like Soul Ring was banned and stuff like that. And so I think Teferi might have saw a little bit of play, but I know like Geist the same draft and Rafik and like other like
Titania.
Yeah, Titania.
Titania, definitely.
Yeah, Mono Green Titania was another like good one too. Like this is just like from off the top of my head, because people were trying to like convince me to play it, but at the time I thought the idea was cool, but I didn't want to spend too much money on a format that I wasn't sure that would be prosperous. And then you fast forward onto 2015, and this is where 2015 gets really interesting because 2015 we get these enemy colored, the enemy colored experience counter commanders. Nice. And so this is where like the meta shifted again, where like people started playing more proactively, because before it was very Battlecruiser where you play land go, occasional Kodamas reach, explosive vegetation.
People didn't like it when you touch their stuff.
People really didn't. No, they really didn't. But now it's like they're pushing these commanders who are very like centric around the deck, and so they need to be answered, right?
I love touching people's stuff.
So
whoa
there. Did you get consent to do that? No, but like
he always has consent.
Like bringing up that though is that like a lot of people didn't like their touch stuff, but then their stuff touch stuff, but a lot of people still incentivize you should bring your own removal, because you never know what they're going to have, and on top of that, you never know if your commander deck is going to be able to outpower or outvalue another player, especially against 3 players. So having more removal is just better. And then this brings up to like another like interesting meta where like tucking effects were like the best removal ever. For example, like condemn and banishing stroke, being able to tuck it the commander creatures to the bottom of the library. Chaos Warp was a big one. Yeah, so like these are really big, and so like tutors, you'd be surprised. But tutors, like they're kind of like frowned upon sometimes by like the casual group. But like tutors were like mandatory, because just in case your commander got tucked, you need to find a way to get them back.
By the way, this is back in 2015, guys.
Like it was like 20. I would say
more
2013,
like
2013, 2014.
Yeah.
Oh, was it 2013?
Because when 2015, what I remember was that's when I believe, don't quote me on this, guys, but that's when the rules committee actually changed the tucking rule, where whenever a commander is moved between zones, regardless from the battlefield to the hand to the deck, the graveyard, where as long as it moves between zones, you have the option to use a replacement effect to put it back into the command zone. And I think the reason why is because a lot of people probably didn't like to get their touch stuffed, especially if they lost their commander. Touched. Yeah, stuffed. Touch stuff, Stuff touched. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean. All right. But yeah, getting their stuff touched. And it felt really bad when things get tucked and you can't play your commander. And worst of all, if your deck revolves around your commander, it just feels really bad.
Oh, yeah.
And then...
especially if you played that...
but remember
played the Ural the Miststalker, and someone just... I'm going to tuck the Ural back into your library.
But it has hexproof.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bad example.
Well, I mean, Terminus.
You got your...
Oh, you're right. Terminus does wreck it. Okay. But
Well, I mean, if you think about it, back then, were commanders really like centered around themselves?
Somewhere.
I
Euro
think somewhere.
Well, I mean,
and Geist
Euro.
of Same Craft was.
I think Rafik could be because he
Rafik
was
too.
mostly a Voltron command. I think if anything, it hurts Voltron the most.
Yeah.
So like for example, like I haven't played him in a long time, but my Zergo deck, I have a lot of like really bad like 4 or 5 mana tutors, as well as a lot of cards that have transmute on them. So I can search out ways to get back my Zergo just in case he got tucked. So, which happened quite a lot because when you have like a 7/2 is like it's 3 hits and you're dead, through commander damage. So and
it
then
was hard to get rid of too.
Yeah, on top of that exactly. So he's indestructible, so it was hard to get rid of. So the only way was like, well, I have to remove off the battlefield somehow. So, which was totally a viable answer. And I think in 2015, I believe that's when the rules committee changed the rule, and that's when Wizards of the Coast pushed out the enemy colored experience counter commanders, and those decks are very focused around those commanders, and so that's where I think that's when the meta shifted again, where decks are now more centralized around the commander more than ever, and they wanted to remove that.
Would you say at around that time, Commander actually became more serious since the rules committee had to jump in and modify the rules because we already had such a big group of people complaining about having their commander stuck?
I think there is, because the rules committee, they're there to help, I guess, alleviate problems and keep things fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if players can't play Magic, then obviously it's not going to be fun.
Right.
And so I think that change that it did, at first I didn't like it, but then I learned to appreciate it a lot.
Right.
And so especially now that like you can play more combo-centric commander-focused decks and use the commander more like more than ever, that's kind of awesome that you actually have that option now.
Yeah.
Sure, you can build a commander deck where commander is kind of like just sitting on the sidelines, and if you need him, he's there, or her, because political reasons. Sirgwin. Yeah. So, but pretty much though, that's why the meta shifted, where like commander focused decks are faster because they want their engines online even faster.
Yeah.
And so this is where like you kind of like, at least from the pickup groups that I saw, you see more Llanowar Elves and more Birds of Paradise and more like creature-based ramp, just so you get that a little bit faster. Don't get me wrong, Kodamas Reach and Cultivate were still really expensive for some odd reason, even though they're commons.
Back in the day?
Well, they were really cheap. But then if you notice, though, they've been going up to like $1.50. And it's for like a common, like, what?
Oh, yeah, I remember when Kodamas Reach used to be like 15 cents.
The budget is like, oh, you need a ramp spell? Just gonna buy Kodamas Reach.
Kodamas Reach.
It was Kodamas Reach first that got expensive, and then Cultivate followed after.
Exactly, it was Kodamas. I think it's Kodamas Reach was only in Kamigawa.
Well, that's why.
Yeah.
But regardless, though, the idea is that like with these commander focused, decks, they want the commanders out as soon as possible to get their engines rolling. And so having a turn 3, Azuri or turn 3 Marin, pretty good.
Oh, yikes. Turn 3 Marion. Oof.
Yeah, exactly. So
I don't know. I feel like Azuri would be worse.
Oh, Zuri's kind of... I mean, even Mizzix back then was kind of like...
Yeah, like, and Mizzix is like, you want to play as many rocks as you can to get Mizzix online as fast as possible,
Right.
And so, I think the only one that didn't benefit from this was like Kalemne, because Kalemne, you want to play bigger spells than Kalemne to pump her up. So it was like...
What about the enchantment one or the Orsov one?
You know what's funny? Daxos, I remember like Daxos was super hyped up, but then like he after a month of hype, he just faded away into existence, like how he faded into the underworld. Poor Daxos. I'm so sorry, man.
Hey, we're going back to Theros.
Oh yeah, we might see a new Daxos. We don't know, but so this is where we get to like this interesting transition where interaction is more common. Tucking interaction is no longer, that viable. Like, it's still played, but not as viable.
Well, it's not as viable now just because of that rule change with the commander.
Yeah, but...
Commander, there was a replacement effect rule change where, what's it called? The commander, you were able to make it so that if an opposing player tucked your commander back to your deck, you had the option to return them back to the command zone.
Yeah, that's totally fine, but I still think tucking effects are still pretty good against Reanimator decks.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, like, what if you, like, it's like, I'd rather you had that at the bottom of your library than in your graveyard. And to be honest, I still think that's fine. But I guess it's just the fact that you can no longer screw somebody over by tucking their commander into their deck. Yeah, it loses most of its appeal, but it doesn't lose its charm of its utility.
Yeah.
And then after from 2015, we get to 2016, and 2016 was arguably one of the best decks. It was a 4-color cycle, and in design it was very interesting because they focused on the color that they lacked. So for example, Zedrus doesn't have white in it, right?
Yeah.
And so what's white about? Good and order. Well, how do we create chaos? Cascade. You know what I mean? So it's very good deck. Atraxa. What can all the those 4 colors do that red can't really do? And they thought of proliferating as in manipulating counters, because red doesn't really have that many ways to manipulate counters. Because blue, surprisingly not, they manipulate charge counters and they have time counters back then. And then white has +1/+1/+1, green has +1/+1/+1 counters, black
-1/-1
has -1/-1 counters,
which would work also with proliferate really well.
Exactly. So then there's very good deck building philosophies and design. I actually enjoyed it a lot. And this is where it gets really interesting, because I think this is where CDH kind of slowly started ticking off, because the partner commanders.
Oh yeah, the partner commanders.
Because it's the partner commanders allow unique deck building, and before you're kind of restricted by what colors you have, and sometimes it's oh, I want to do this combo, but that requires me to be in 4 colors, but I don't want to play 5 colors.
Well, also at around that time, Kaladesh came out, right?
2016, yeah.
Yeah, it was when Kaladesh came out. A lot of big artifacts that enabled a lot of competitive decks did come out. Paradox Engine, Walking Ballista.
I guess that's true. That's also pretty true.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of interesting, because if you think about it, is that if we went from Battlecruiser, more interactive, we streamline it down, faster focus, narrow game plan, and then finally we even create a separate division of competitive EDH now. And then now we have our casuals, but we have multi-tiered casuals, because it's you can be really jank.
Multi-tiered casuals. Could we go over that real quick?
So yeah, so this is how I view things, because it's
that's a very new term. That's a pretty new term that I.
So the way how I view it is that there's 2 spheres. There's the competitive sphere and then the casual sphere, right? But then a lot of people hate hearing themselves being called casuals, because
filthy casuals.
Yeah, casuals got this negative denomination.
What is wrong with that name? There's nothing wrong with it.
There's really nothing.
No, there's nothing. Yeah.
It's how am I dressed? Casually, and then but now all of a sudden when it goes to gaming or sports, I play casually, and then all of a sudden you're you're a filthy casual.
Or in a dating experience, hey, what do you think about that girl? Oh, she's so casual. I'm bro, if you can get a girl, doesn't matter if she's casual or not. You get it.
I know, right?
Get 'em.
So there's just that negative connotation behind the word casual when there really shouldn't be any, and so this is where I kind of developed
you don't really want to go for a girl that's super competitive. You don't want a lot of guys.
Oh no!
No! You go for the casual girls, people. So if you're a casual Magic player, chances are you'll meet more casual female players, the competitive female players. Think about that.
No, but then what if you want to raise the bar and prove yourself and go infinite on turn 3?
Okay, moving on.
All right. But real talk though. So the way how I view Magic is, or at least for EDH, is that we have one sphere is competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the goal is to be optimized as possible. You play very efficiently, and you make the best reads, and you try to combo off and win, or try to lock down your opponent. And it's a game of chess, very methodical. And there's nothing to say that casual can't be methodical either. But then there's a different.
Play a lot of mana efficient.
I say the pre-con decks do that the best. Is that because you have to use your resources well enough, so then it's cause what's in everyone else's deck, but you have to know when to use it.
You're also bound by limitations, by a lot more restrictive limitations when you're talking about precons versus competitive. You're you have the whole pool of Magic. It's basically 100 card legacies.
No, I know.
Singleton.
I'm just saying that
Exactly.
like on
Vintage.
on
Yeah.
like Victor's topic of there's like the casual people
Mhm.
and like it being a game of chess. I think what does the best are the precons.
Yeah, because then like everyone's roughly equal footing, right?
Right.
That's what you
Right.
mean.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what I mean though, is that like there's nothing wrong with casual because casual games can be methodical, and I think those are the best ones because you're methodical, you're planning things out, and every move that you made has an impact, and you feel great about it.
And you play with a budget restriction too.
Yeah,
I don't know
Yeah.
why.
and so pretty much like there's nothing wrong with that, and so I tiered it where like the games in competitive are very fast because everyone is clean. It's like you're a fighting game tournament. You execute your combos, you get in, you deal your damage, no punishment, or you get the good reads, and then you just go off. But then, whereas casual is like I want to have fun, and games can last as long as like they need to last. You know what I mean?
And you
it's-
can blow up the field 4 times and it'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So it really depends. And so like I had a discussion with another friend of mine, and he was talking about deck building, and it's really strange because he kind of contradicted himself a little bit, where he's like, "Oh, I want to be super consistent and be able to combo and win off of like I was like, okay, so then we're talking about CEH territory. It's like, what do you mean by CEH territory? I'm like, well, that's what competitive is that you want to be very consistent and combo off and win. And he's like, is that a bad thing? I'm like, no. It's just like, you'll probably be winning around like turn 3, turn 4. And then like ideally if no one can stop you. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, that's too soon. I want to be able to win like, maybe turn 6, turn 7, maybe turn 8, turn 10. And then I was like, okay, so we're casual. And then all of a sudden he's like, but I don't want to be a casual.
But remember back in the day, you usually win on like turn 6.
I wouldn't even say back in the day, to be honest. It was a slugfest.
Or I mean, if it was like a combo deck, like turn 6 would be like the special turn. I think.
Yeah. Like
I mean, back then, 7-hour commander games was not unheard of. This is to be expected. 3-hour commander games was the norm. I felt like, at least for my particular meta.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was same. I was like, I was just like, oh, these games are fine, but I'm like, I feel like they're not getting anywhere. And then on top of that, like, people, how they played back then, they didn't want to attack because they didn't want to make enemies, and we always dirtle around until you assembled all the pieces of Exodia, and then you go out for the offensive.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, the meta game has shifted a lot because, there's actually a crazy subdivide. Like I said, the multi-tiered casual is that you have the competitive and then you have the multi-tiered casuals, and so we have like jank, like people sitting on chair tribal, and then it's like that's like the bottom tier, right?
Or lightning.
Oh no! Actually,
lightning bolts.
No. I would dare say the
Tribal.
bottom tier of the casual is like draft fodder. You're playing with literally draft fodder. It's literally the best you got.
I mean, that is the cheapest option.
I mean, yeah, that is.
And then from that point on, then you have, now you have a better budget, but then you're playing with a really interesting restriction on yourself, which is, chairman fodder or people with weather effects, lightning bolt, tribal, you know what I mean? Whatever it may be. And then from that point on, you get to the focus tier, right? And focus tier is where it's like the deck actually has a solid game plan, and you want to proceed to do your game plan. And this is very similar to what the command zone said. And I had the same mentality too, but I wasn't sure if that's what people expected, because everyone had their own way of deck building, and people got really butthurt when you tell them how to deck build. So I just kept my mouth shut. But luckily command zone kind of went out with it and actually gave the tier list, the power level.
Well, here's the other interesting with the power levels and tier lists. Not all decks are built to win. You have some chaos decks that just want to
Invoke
disrupt everyone's boards, with no intent of trying to win the game. You also have those group hub decks which want to just accelerate everyone. They may have 1 or 2 win cons, but how consistently can they really pull that off?
Exactly. So that's where you draw the line from casual and competitive, because I think every competitive deck wants to win. They want to be the best. They want to prove that they're the best. There's nothing wrong with being spiky. It's they want to be the best they can, compete with the best players they can, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They want to have a good, fair competition. And so that's why, like, when you have a good discussion with, like, a lot of people have, like, this negative notion that competitive players are dicks.
Well, it comes from the
Caca!
notion.
It
It comes from the notion that the word spiky. If you're the spike player, you're kind of the frowned upon because Commander was supposed to be this super casual format.
The Timmy format.
Yeah.
But I totally agree to a certain extent. But then, when you think about it, I think I met a couple of really chill CEDH players, and they're the ones who usually talk to players about, like, oh, my deck has CEDH, and they'll let you know that, like, they're on, like, another league.
Yeah.
And it's not to be condescending, because some people get really offended and they take it as you're condescending, but it's like, no, it's like, if you're not well equipped to play against my deck, you're not going to have a fun time.
Right.
And it's kind of
just important to communicate that.
exactly
Just like a warning shot.
exactly, and then, like, I think it's a courtesy thing. It's not them being condescending at all. And so, like, back to the multi-level of casual, it's like there's, like, and then, like, because you have different tier lists, right? So you have, like, draft fodder, some sort of weird tribal jank theme type of thing going on, and then you have focused, like, we have a solid game plan.
But then
and
again,
then you have
within the focus, you have decks that don't necessarily intend to win, but intend to just disrupt the board.
exactly. You have a game plan, but then it's not to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have a game plan that you want to execute.
Or it's like a really like a strategy that's like life game or like
Yeah, some sort of theme.
yeah.
And I think that's fine.
And then you also have another tier
And
where
then after that, I have another tier,
Right.
and that's where it's like you get to optimize, like high level casuals, right? Where
you
it's
play
like
to win.
you play to win and you execute your game plan as best as possible with whatever resources you have.
You can
And-
also have a theme, but
And
like
you
Yeah,
can,
we can.
yeah.
That's
you definitely
fine.
can, but sometimes
That is the theme. Winning.
all we do is win, no matter what. But I do agree. So that's how I view it, because it's like you're trying to because you want to win, you want to prove that you like
Right.
you left your mark on this world, you showed up everybody, and like all that tough like fighting and grit and your blood, sweat, and tears in a long match game, you're on top, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like that's the top end of like casual, and then the upper sphere is where I would place like the CEDH, and that's where it was like CEDH is like you're playing with the big boys,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Playing with the big boys now.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that people just have the really negative term of casual, and then not to mention that how there's that power level scale of like from the command zone where it's like a 1-2 is like jank or something like that, and the 3-4 is casual, and the 5-6 is focus, and the 7-8 is optimized, and the 9-10 is competitive. Here's the thing. It's a psychological issue. A lot of people like 5-6 is a focus, right? But then a lot of people, when they grade themselves, they give themselves at least like a C, a 75%, an 80%. They don't want to view themselves as anything less, because anything less is failure. What's an F? A D, a 60%, a 50%.
What's a 1 and 2?
And then so you go the scale, and the scale of 5-6 is considered focus. But yet if you go on the scale of 1 to 10, is because their mind perceives it as that's a 50 to 60%. I don't want to be a 50-60%. So this is where you get a lot of people miscommunicating, where they think that they're actually high up on the scale, but in reality they're lower on the scale. And so that's why I in my mind, we can't be using numbers. You can use numbers as a way to code things, but then people register numbers differently because of our grading scale.
Thing is, you need a way to somehow communicate effectively the power level of your
Exactly, but a lot of people, here's the thing, even if proper communication, if they view themselves as like, oh, my deck is like a 70%, it's like a C, right? But in reality, a 70% on that power scale is technically you're optimized. Are you really optimized? And people take it harshly, because they
Right.
don't want to be viewed as like
unoptimal.
They don't want to get criticized. People take criticism really badly sometimes. It depends. Everyone's different, and so that's where I think it's like we can't really be using these numbers. Like these numbers like help a lot, but I think what we need to do is create like I said, a multi-layer sphere of casual. So like because competitive should be its own meta and subject, right? And then for casual, there's multi-tiers, and so like at what level do you sit at? And then don't have a grade on it, because people get butthurt about the grades, and then they think that like oh, I'm obviously an 80%, and then like you obviously play against them, and then it's like, bro, it's like they get salty about it, and you're like, well, we're playing like optimized, right, an 8, And it's like, where's your counter spells? Where's your removal? You look in their deck and like they have like 2 or 3 removal spells.
Wow.
Like that'd be like the biggest slap in the face because it's like if you're if you're like considering yourself adequately optimized and like you're not. What does that make all the other players? God tier level, tier 0, triple SS tier.
Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan level,
Yeah, exactly.
Ultra Instinct.
Well, honestly, I think you should just have an open mind. If you're gonna put all those terms together, I think putting an open mind would be the best. Like what you said earlier, if someone comes in and says, "Oh, I have a CEDH deck," I feel like that's your opportunity to take a look at his deck, see what you like. You should probably incorporate that in your deck, and then if people can handle criticisms well, you probably should take it because they're trying to make your deck better.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
or even if you don't know, the level of your deck, try playing. Even if you lose, so what? It's one game. You gotta, there's many games you can play after that one game, and once you know what your deck is, because the only way you can really know the power level of your deck is when you pit it up against.
Play against someone really strong.
You gotta pit it up against the other player.
Oh, not to mention too is
that's how you go Ultra Instinct, guys. I'm just letting you know.
I mean,
that's how you get your Zenkai boost, guys. After multiple defeats.
That's how the Megata no Gokui came out, like with the spirit bomb smacking Goku right in the.
But the crazy thing though is
so
that,
be like Goku.
A lot of people
be open-minded.
Yeah, you have to be open-minded and be willing to take on stronger foes. So
Face Beerus all the time, or Whis if you really want to go that far.
Yeah, exactly. But in layman's term though, is that like you don't be scared to lose because realistically speaking, it's not a 1v1 game. A 1v1 game, because there's 2 players, a 50% win rate is pretty decent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you're up against 2 more players. You're gonna lose more often than not because you're up against 3 players. And having a 25% win rate, it's pretty good.
You don't even have to be the best deck to win the most number of times either.
No,
remember, guys, it's a commander game. Political is the way to go.
Yeah,
obviously.
Well, it depends on and again, that also depends on the tier, right? Because some decks, not all decks are made equally.
No, they're not. They're not. And so that's what it's like. The meta game has shifted a lot from being Battlecruiser Magic, very, very casual, more interaction, and then now it's gone to, more interaction, a little bit more competitive in the sense of like people are more proactive. They want to like accelerate the game plan a bit more and shine.
You get to touch other people's things now.
Exactly.
But don't be butthurt though. If they're touching your things, you're pretty much dangerous, and you should probably know yourself that you're threatening.
Exactly. So you have to be able. This is where it takes skill because you have to actually be able to gauge your own power level and hide your power level.
And politic your way out of
Be
things.
it Krillin.
You gotta know, when Goku hit his power level and they didn't detect him until when he came up out of nowhere, and then Nappa's like, what does the scouter say about his power level, Vegeta?
And
it's over.
It's over 9,000.
Exactly. So the metagame has shifted a lot, guys, and so take it with a grain of salt. That build a deck, but then you have to talk with your community a little bit and figure out what's the norm and see so you can fit in and blend in, because if you're too powerful, then you're going to get hated out on. If you're too weak, you're going to hate yourself because you're not making a big enough impact in the game. So that's our takeaway message for this episode, guys. But do you guys have any other closing remarks? Because
okay, well, you gotta be like Gotenks. You gotta troll sometimes because he politic his way out of his battle against Boo. You can do that with your casual tier deck. It doesn't matter what level it is. If you can be like Gotenks, you can play Magic.
He's not wrong. A silver tongue is very powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, shout and make a hole, and you'll get out of the mess real fast.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Maho Shonen.
All right, guys.
Oh my god!
That was...
I had the sniffles the entire.